Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 246 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is a very interesting fish that often gets confused with a different fish. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is the reef manta ray. Now, the reef manta ray, or scientific name Mobula alfredi, again, that's Mobula alfredi, it is part of the family Mobulidae, which is the family of manta rays and devilfishes. Now, the last time we talked about sort of rays was actually quite long ago, so I figured it'd be time to bring it back. And I thought, what better than the reef manta ray? Which is probably one of the most common manta rays that people see in the world. So, thought it'd be really cool. Now, the reef manta ray is native to the Indo-Pacific Oceans and is primarily found in coastal regions in relatively shallow reef systems, which is why they are one of the most common manta rays that are found while snorkeling, because, shallow reef systems are always a big draw for tourism. And reef manta rays have very specific times that they're in the reefs, and people love looking at them, as they should, because these are a very large fish. They average a disc size of around 3.5 to 3 meters, which is around 11 feet. And your disc size is going to be from here to here, so wingtip to wingtip. Now, that's a fairly large fish, but they can grow up to much larger, around 5 feet, which is around 16 feet. And the maximum size is 5.5 meters, which is 18 feet. Oh, very sorry, it has been a long day. But 5.5 feet, which is around 18 feet, that would be a very large animal. And they can weigh up to 700 kilograms, which is around 1,500 pounds. So not only are they fairly wide, they are actually very dense, as expected. These have a pelagic lifestyle, meaning they are, even though they are associated with reef systems, they are swimming throughout the water columns, unlike most other skates and rays that are cruising along the bottom. Now, these are dorsally compressed, as rays are. They have these large and long triangular pectoral fins. They have the cephalic fins, as you can see right here. You get a little better picture of them. We've talked about cephalic fins in the past. They're actually, technically, I believe they're extensions of the pectoral fins. They have this very small dorsal fin right here. Then they have this long whip-like tail. Now, it's not as long, or it's not as long as like the giant devil rays, but it is fairly long, but it does not have spines. Their coloration's actually fairly bland. They are usually very dark, dark black to like a dark blue. On the back, you have these kind of like shoulder patches, these white patches, which is very similar to the giant oceanic ray. In the bottom, you're going to have these sort of black splotches here towards the back end of the body, with this white belly. There's a lot of stuff. It's not really a coloration. They're beautiful fish, but they're not really here for coloration. But they are often confused with the gigantic oceanic ray, which we have a picture of here. Now, obviously, the reef manta ray is smaller, but that's not always a good characteristic. And something interesting that I found out, if you want to determine the coloration differences, The best way is apparently looking at the coloration around the head. Now, both of them have these white shoulder patches, and you can see here that they can be wider than this. So I don't like to say that they're, that it is actually white, the coloration, but if you look at the coloration pattern, the black stripe through the center down the back and across the head forms a T on the gigantic oceanic ray, versus the reef manta ray creates more of a Y pattern. In every one of these that you can see it's much more of a Y, versus the giant oceanic ray was a T. Always good to tell the difference between animals that look very, very similar to each other. So I thought that was a really neat factor. Now, they are a pelagic feeder, and they feed by ram filter feeding, meaning they're basically just swimming through the water and having all the water go through their mouth. And that's what those cephalic fins are actually for. They're helping funnel the water through the mouth and over the gill rakers, filtering out the plankton and things like that. You can see they can kind of create a very large cavity, and it's kind of hard to go into more depth. They find a plankton patch, and they open their mouth, and they roll their cephalic fins down, and they just start going through the water. Most of the time, you're going to see them more like this, where the cephalic fins are actually rolled up. That's much more aerodynamic, obviously. And this fish, needs to be, not aerodynamic, hydrodynamic. This fish needs to be hydrodynamic because it is that's how it avoids predators. It avoids predators by speed. Now, things like tiger sharks and things like that can still eat manta rays, but these fish can swim extremely fast. I believe around 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, around 15 miles per hour. So they can go really, really fast. And I do believe these are another example of one of the mantas that will leave the water. So they'll just jump out of the water to escape predators. And that's really smart, and as it shouldn't be really a surprise that they are this smart, because the reef manta ray actually has one of the largest brain to body ratios of fish in the world, and I believe it's actually just one of the largest in the world regardless of animal species, but I'm not entirely sure on that one. Now, unfortunately, this fish is still listed as vulnerable according to the IUCN, and that is unfortunately due to overfishing 100%. These fish are very good at escaping predators. However, they are fished commercially by people, and it has caused a huge detriment to their population. You combine that with a low fecundity rate, which we'll talk about in a second, a long gestation period of 12 to 13 months, and very late sexual maturity. Because these are a very long-lived species, they can live up to 50 years. I believe they don't even get sexually mature until around 10 to 15. When you combine those factors, it is almost a perfect storm for a fish species to be very easily exploited by humans. You're talking about a very, very large fish that has a lot of biomass on him, and they're in shallower areas, which is where the people are, and they don't have many babies, and it takes them a long time to have their babies. So unfortunately, it is a sad situation. But for the interesting fact we're going to end the video on, actually talks about their reproduction, more specifically their reproductive ways of birthing. Now, these are an ovoviviparous species, and that is so common at this point. I believe we've talked about it to death. So, remember this ovovivipary is like the stage between egg laying and live birth. So essentially the eggs stay inside the female and they hatch and will stay inside of the female sometimes to grow even farther, or they'll come out immediately after hatching. This particular species, the young stay inside the female for quite a long time, doing that aplacental secretion sort of semi-milk style, and that is why they have that gestation period of 12 to 13 months. But they usually only give birth to one pup. There are some instances where they said 2 pups is how they give birth, but it's much more likely that they give birth to 1 pup. And that's that extremely low fecundity rate that I was talking about. Fecundity is sort of how many young can one female produce. Well, this female can only produce 1 during a time. And we were talking about gestation rate of 12 to 13 months. That, remember, reproductive areas come in cycles, and so they give birth to 1 pup, but then they must wait until they have to essentially have the chance to make another pup, which to me means if they get pregnant 1 year, then 12-13 months later they give birth, and usually it takes some time for a female to recover from that, meaning they're not even able to get pregnant again until the year after, which to me, unless it would need to be at that time, so that'd be 1, 2, 3. So they would, if my math is mathing correctly, that means that they would only give birth to probably around max of 1 pup every 3 years, which is very, very low for a fish species that is actively fished and already takes some time. Now, it's not all sad, and what is actually interesting about this, and why I kind of did this, is the sheer size of the pup when they give birth is astounding. Usually, the females give birth to a pup that is already around 1.4 meters, which is 4.5 feet wide. So, remember, wingtip to wingtip, 4.5 feet wide, and already about 9 kilograms, which is 20 pounds. And when the young come out, they are essentially just a young adult. They are ready to survive. They are ready to go, which is one of the good things about ovovivipary. And then the super interesting fact that we're actually going to end the video on is the disc width of the largest pup born in an aquarium, obviously a large aquarium, was 1.92 meters, which is 6.25 feet. That is an astoundingly large young pup. I mean, that poor mother, bless her heart, oh my gosh. So there is captive breeding programs. It's not just all doom and gloom for this fish, and hopefully people become more aware and support their things. But this is still such a beautiful and mesmerizing fish. Anyone who has watched manta rays swim can tell you the exact same thing. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Love all the comments. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated regardless. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. and peace.